All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. So, for your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside Sam, you know him as CFC Central. And of course, if we're together, it means it's another match preview. That's right, Chelsea taking on Bournemouth this weekend, and an opportunity to just make people feel a little bit better after a Leeds result that left us, unfortunately, feeling a little down, a little muted, and was lackluster in terms of how the manager, the players, and just the entirety of the team handled the situation. But this gives us an opportunity on a quick turn after the midweek, Sam, to restore order, to reignite the will and the belief of the faithful Chelsea supporters, our beloved Blues, in hopes that we might see something just a touch different after a result that really did not go to script on how we potentially talked about it during our last preview.
I mean, what do you mean it didn't go to script? I mean, you come up against an 18th place side desperately wanting a win, their manager under absolute fire. Who better to face than Charity FC? And I think that's exactly been the case for a long, long time. We turn up in the big games, and when it's, just flat track bullies, do your job, we never seem to do the right thing. So we're coming up against a side now that hasn't won in 5 games. And, star winger is out of form. A lot of other players who fired last season aren't doing well. You do not want to repeat that performance. I think you want to go out and make a statement. Obviously, there are no formation changes on the line that we spent the entire last podcast trying to explain. So hopefully you can go out there and actually make rectifications for what was an abysmal performance last time out.
Yeah, definitely an opportunity. And I mean, just if we think about where Bournemouth are currently, so they are 14th in the Premier League table, their last 5 matches, 4 losses and a draw. They currently sit on 19 points. So just 5 ahead of Leeds United. But again, just 6 behind us, which tells you just how crazy it is. Sorry, 5 behind us. The table is at this point in time, where the position 10 places is a very small number of points between the two sides. Bournemouth currently have 24 goals for, 24 goals against. So they've got a -3 goal differential heading into this one. And just a couple of those last few matches that they played, it was the 1-0 loss to Everton at home. There was the 3-2 thriller where Sunderland beat them. Bournemouth also picked up a red card in that one. And then it was a 2-2 draw to West Ham. So those are the 3 matches that they have had since the return from the international break. But as we look at it, Sam, just we always kind of tend to talk about just that player availability is one of the first things to consider, because that does change how you frame, how you think about your analysis. Any key players that are going to be missing for Bournemouth heading into this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think they have generally everybody okay. Antoine Semenyo was injured for the longest time. I think was out for a couple of games plus like the last international break, if I'm not wrong. He's back. He played against Everton, so it does show as doubtful, but probably because they're trying to figure out if you can get a little rest and rotate like we did against Leeds. Justin Kluivert, who's their number 10, is also apparently a doubt. I don't know whether he's going to be playing that slot, but he's somebody who's featured heavily. I think he's started almost every single game except maybe one. So he's probably unavailable. Lewis Cook for certain is out because he's serving a 3-match ban for a red card. So he's somebody who's been very key for them in midfield, would have accentuated just the defensive work that Iraola relies so much on, of pressing and counter-pressing work. He was very, very good against us last season, so he's out. And I think Ben Doak is out for a long term. So I think just maybe 2 players that I can count. One probably going to play, the other definitely out. But they've coped pretty well without him also. So I think it's going to be a clean bill of health, just that it's going to be a quick turnaround time, and we're going to have a few players fresh and ready to go.
Well, very important things to consider there. And just maybe as we start to get on the topic of style of play, I mean, they had this, and it felt like Bournemouth was shot out of a cannon to start the season, particularly with Semenyo and how he was contributing there. But then there's been a little bit of a challenge there. I mean, they were getting some of their looks in and having to maybe recomport themselves appropriately. Can you walk me through just, where they're at in terms of how you're observing the style of play and how Areola is, it has adapted that?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting evolution because when we did the preview pods last season, it was pretty clearly something was there are very clear defined weaknesses and strengths. So the strength being that they are extremely good when they're pressing, counter pressing, very aggressive. If you look at their passes per defensive action, which sort of targets or tells you the metric for how aggressive somebody's counter presses after losing the ball, they're usually in the top three. And Iraola demands it. He almost structures his side around it. The attackers, for example, not really proven goal scorers except Semenyo, but more about, following Klopp's mandate of be very good at counter pressing and gegen pressing is going to be the best playmaker for you. So that's been the case. This season, they've adapted a little bit. They've not been shy to dial down the intensity and be a little more patient, but there are certain weaknesses still in terms of when you give them a lot of the ball. For example, last 5 games they've had more than 50% possession, and when they do have that ball, then it becomes harder for them to counter, harder for them to find their quicker players, and they generally don't know what to do with the ball, which is quite weird for a Basque Spanish coach. So that's I think where they are right now. They started like a house on fire this season. We're almost title contenders behind, second place for the longest time. Antoine Semenyo was firing on all cylinders, and then they hit their first bump, and now they're winless in 5, like I mentioned. And in those 5 games, they've only scored 5 and they've conceded 13. So probably the ideal time to meet them, Dan.
We might have said that about other teams, but and again, which I feel like we have to
Hmm.
caveat a lot of things here. We're not trying to jinx the team. We're not trying to put our team in an unenviable position. They just play the team in front of us, and we're just trying to offer analysis here. Can you maybe start to then walk us through a little bit of just, we're talking back to front, how the team is getting on, because obviously there's a familiar face or a sort of familiar face between the sticks for this team.
People will remember Petrovic, coming in and doing a couple of heroics for us, but not really being given the chance. I think people saw him sort of shining for Strasbourg when they were watching Andre Santos, but probably didn't get the opportunity to, lead the number one slot for Chelsea, saying that he wanted to do so, otherwise didn't want to go to the Club World Cup. He's done okay. I mean, okay is being a little generous, but it's just a new club for him. I think he's been a little unlucky also. Lots of goals going past him by deflections and probably not something that he can stop, but it's been a bit chaotic for him. We all know that he's quite good at penalties also. So if there's going to be a penalty situation with Cole Palmer not in there, then that's going to be an interesting contest, in my opinion. In defense, Marcos Senesi is just back from a ban, unfortunately. He's been very good lately, and defensively just very very active, somebody who's excellent inside the box, lots of clearances, will keep the box tidy. His CB partner is either going to be Bafode Diakite, who somebody I was watching very closely when he was playing in League 1, somebody who a lot of other clubs were watching, saying that they could be, and he could be a very good centre back option for them. And the other one is also somebody I believe will Chelsea will be keeping a very close eye on. He's 18 years old, Serbian defender Milosavljevic, being quite good. I've seen him come up against Ollie Watkins 1v1, has done really well. He's come up against obviously a couple of other really good centre forwards also. Only played I think 4 games or 5 games this season, but whenever he has featured for an 18-year-old defender, has looked quite solid. So one definitely to keep an eye on.
All right, well, let's get our first ad break out of the lane. Then we come back. We will talk all about the other parts of the pitch, having covered the defense, but we will get into the midfield and attack as well. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, Sam. So continuing our conversation, looking at all areas of the pitch for this side, can you walk me through the midfield? And I think, again, another player that potentially we were considering potentially about to sign, then didn't decide to sign the player who is now a part of this side.
I think somebody who will be very familiar to you as well as a
This is true.
US US national team follower. So yeah, I think Tyler Adams obviously just almost joined Chelsea. The move fell through. Very ball heavy profiles, just going to be very ball winning heavy profile, rather I should say, somebody who's going to go and try to do the dirty work, win the ball back in the center of the park, and then has a very strong engine. I think in terms of endurance and stamina, he's going to be very mobile and try to be there in between those tackles and interceptions. And especially when we don't have Caicedo, he's definitely going to be there. And obviously, he would have watched his former side beat us, so hopefully not to inspire there. His pivot partner is Alex Scott, who's more of a ball progressor, in my opinion. Somebody who's helping Bournemouth sort of connect midfield to attack. He will progress a little bit up the pitch, try to carry and basically push into those advanced zones. So that is something that I believe will help Bournemouth's attack come together. So he's definitely one to watch. Up the pitch in terms of attack, obviously, lots of the more worrisome part about it, Dan, I think, would be just focusing on what they're going to do if we give them the opportunity to get on those fast breaks against our defense. So, yeah, I think midfield is all right, but attack is something that we'll have to be very careful about.
Oh, definitely something that, again, I think the conversation around attack for Bournemouth starts and maybe doesn't end, but it does feel as if the majority of the story is Semenyo. So, do you want to talk about him and just how challenging he might be as as an attacker for our defense coming up in this game?
Yeah, I think before we do, I think it's important to point out that Bournemouth lead the Premier League for goals from counter attacks, and that's 6 goals this season. So a lot of the attack is structured around just very quick breaks. And also, like I mentioned, even then number 10 and the other winger is, or even Evan Nielsen, for example, at centre forward, are all very good pressers of the ball, very good at counter pressing, the intensity, the engine, the tendency to put in those tackles and win the ball back is very fierce. So Semenyo is somebody who's been catching the eye of a lot of top clubs. Very, very potent shooting threat, capable of launching rockets with either foot. So that's something to be careful about. If you saw that 1v1 with Achampong last season, where he absolutely launched a howitzer into the top corner, I think a good example of what he can do if you give him a lot of space. He's out of form, like we mentioned, no goals for club and country in 9 games now. So maybe the injury also playing a little bit of a part there. Clivert, for example, is somebody who's very good at pressing, will get into those nice box positions, pop up behind Evan Nielsen, beyond him, making runs. And it basically, Tavernier is also somebody who does exactly the same thing. Not really a 1v1 profile, but able to receive the ball, able to run at people sometimes, but more about like passing the ball, making these little interchanges and getting into the box for shooting opportunities. So a lot depends on Bournemouth's ability to win the ball back and then go against disorganized defenses. But if you're structured, if you're very calm about your press defense and have everything organized, then it's very hard for Bournemouth to do a lot of stuff, except Semenyo, who I think can do a lot of good things against any defense. Evan Nielsen, I mentioned, centre forward, used to play for Porto, quite a solid option at centre forward. He can function as a target man, knock down long balls, which Bournemouth often do when they come up against a side that presses well. Don't really have those pivots to turn around and play, so they will go long often. And Junior Krupi, somebody I was watching, and I've heard from a little birdie that we were quite interested in signing. He will come on as an impact sub. Already has 4 games, 4 goals this season, in I think about 5 or 6 games, slightly more if I'm not wrong. And he will be basically coming on at the last end of games to try and grab a goal for Bournemouth if they're still in it.
All right, then. So we've talked a lot about what works well for Bournemouth, particularly after again that last run of games here. That there were a lot of things, and there are still a lot of things that are going right for them. It just hasn't netted out in the end results with a maximum number of points. What are the things that they are going to be extremely concerned about and that should give us as Chelsea supporters and then Enzo Maresca and the players confidence that this could be the rebound game that we're looking for?
I think form, individual and collective, seems to have dropped off, Dan. So Semenyo, like we mentioned, is a little up and down in terms of his last 9 games. Clivert had 18 goal and assists last season, 6 penalties included, but he has 1 goal in I think 12 or 13 games so far. So just the individuals in the front line not really doing the kind of job that they should be doing, coming and trying to score and at least like be in those advantageous positions has been easy for them. But the last 5 games it has been significantly harder, with more teams willing to give them the ball and asking them to make things happen, which is a little hard for them. The second I'd like to point out is that, like Leeds, they struggle on defensive set pieces. By numbers, slightly worse. They're second in the league for set piece goals conceded with 9. So, one to keep an eye on if you want to make your on the ledge prediction. The third is the line can be a bit too aggressive to push up. So, Iraola wants obviously a high press, and I don't know whether he'll try to maybe target our vulnerabilities after Leeds and say, okay, let's put our foot on the accelerator and go all guns blazing, which I think sometimes with the right players suits us, especially when Caicedo is there in the middle of the park. Or otherwise he'll just ease off and say, okay, we'll wait for Chelsea to make a mistake. That's going to be an interesting thing. But if they come hard at us, then there is the option of going long. Villa did it very, very often to try and go to Ollie Watkins and ask, that narrow front three to try and win the ball. So that's an option to do. And there is every chance that you can disorient the back line, which tends to have a couple of issues in trying to keep up with their markers because it's man to man all across for Iraola. The number 9 and number 10, so Haaland and Cherky dropping caused a lot of issues for City, and Jeremy Doku moved a lot from the wings into those central zones, and that also caused a lot of problems for them. So if you've got a winger who's capable of coming inside and opening up the flanks, then that would be a good rampaging act for, say, Reece James or Malo Gusto or even Kukureya. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the last one I'd probably like to say is there's a lot of eagerness to win the ball in the center of the pitch because their identity is counter pressing and having those ball wins, which is crucial to them scoring. So irrespective of whether they're in a high pressing situation or in a mid block, when you get into those central zones, Tyler Adams will jump in. There will be a couple other players who'll try to get in and get into those central pressing traps to win the ball. And if they don't, then there is a very good opportunity that a runner can just nick a loose ball and you have basically spaces to pick your center forward. So yeah, I think fast breaks and winning the ball in the middle of the pitch and getting to those loose balls first, that's going to be crucial. But are we able to going to do that efficiently without Caicedo is the big question mark.
Yeah, the absence of Caicedo is going to be felt in extreme ways, I think, not necessarily just even the last game, but this game as well. And, I guess it's nice, at least in the midweek, he'll be able to play for us in the Champions League. But, one more game after this without our star midfielder, Moises Caicedo, it definitely feels a little rough. Now, Sam, if we could flip the script backwards, you have some questions, you have some considerations you think Enzo Maresca is going to have to make or the players going to have to make. What questions you want to throw at me, and I will try to come up with at least what I think Enzo Maresca might do, not necessarily what people want to hear.
Yeah, I think I'll lead in with the same question that I did against Leeds. No pun intended. But, everybody sort of happy. The only happy thing about the Leeds game was watching Palmer jog back onto the grass. So we do know that the number 9, number 10 slots caused Bournemouth a lot of issues. So are you starting Palmer for 45 and having a talisman on the pitch, or is it just doing what the club has done and easing him in those situations?
I think he's going to get eased in. I mean, we've seen that Maresca is willing to do the Reece James starts for 45 and then gets subbed off. So that is a reality. What you're projecting under previous managers probably would not have had happened. But under Maresca, he's proven he is willing to do that, willing to consider it. It does feel as if it's more of the 20 to 30 minute cameo and then having him ready for the Champions League game. I think that is where I imagine Maresca is charting some of the health and wellness of these players is, yes, I want to go win. Yes, I need to restore some faith after the Leeds match, but I also need my players to come back and Cole Palmer to be healthy for the remainder of the season and not jump back into immediately risking him for this fixture against Bournemouth. So my gut says comes on as a sub. My belief on Enzo Maresca's pragmatism is that he will come back on as a sub and that he will not start this game. But you can tell me if you believe otherwise.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, pragmatism is the name of the game. And if you do want your star player fit for that brutal fixture run, then you have to resist the temptation of throwing him into the deep end and then asking him to swim through those grueling games. So take it easy. I think even if you bring him on like you do in Estevao, which is going to be like a double impact sub for me, at least for 3-4 games, I don't mind it, to be honest. There's no better person to bring on than Cole Palmer. So I would also take it nice and slow. And I do know that there's a lot of, I think it's a nice segue for me into the next question, which is, number 10, number 9 slots have been excruciatingly painful for us to watch. Delap, I think, we tend to give him a short leash because we've seen this process with Jackson, and it's sort of like somebody's hit the reset button, and now we're watching it with somebody else. But what are you doing with Liam Delap and Joao Pedro? I think Mark Guiu came in, had a little bit of a cameo, and we all sort of sat up and said maybe he needs to be used now. And then Joao Pedro really hasn't done anything for the longest time. So how are you handling that situation? Is this Mark Guiu starting and saying the number 10 slot you're making a change, or are you going with them because it's important for both of them to find their form?
I think he's going to persevere and try to play them into form. I don't believe that he is going to accept that they can't get there. What I could see happening is if we're talking about Marguiu getting minutes and Marguiu getting the opportunity to try to either impress or maybe even put himself in a position as a starter, which I think is still just going to be an uphill battle that he faces because he was not the high dollar signing as relates to some of the others. Could it be a earlier sub for Delap? Could it be, and could it be one of those 45-minute subs that you're talking about? I was like, hey, I still need you to get ramped up. I still need to get ready. I need you to be ready to go, play against Atalanta. Or, I mean, we could still see even the Pedro Neto number 9, central attacker type of situation pop as well too. Like I do think different from the defense, there is some flexibility that Enzo Maresca has within the types of players, the type of profile he has. I mean, you could even, I mean, Estevao is very comfortable playing a 10. You could put him into the 10 with Delap and then give him that opportunity to play in the 10 with, Delap in front of him for part of it and then Marquillo in front of him for another part of it. Like that could be an option as well if Garnacho gets a chance. So I would imagine to start in this fixture. Obviously, he came on, before Jamie get into the last game. I do think there is some flexibility there. And then that gives you an option to use Cole Palmer really across either the 10 role or on on the right hand side of attack if it is Pedro Neto starts there to spell one of those two players as we get further into the game.
I think it's uncharted waters for Maresca now because he did mention it's the hardest part in the press conference of just planning games and scheduling which 11 turns up for which game. And now you've got a must-win game, and then you've got another must-win game. I mean, with Atlanta coming up, so it's definitely intriguing how he's going to basically restore the balance. We've got some really nice thoughts on the review board from Jess and everybody else talking about you need to preserve partnerships. You need to have some sense in terms of the rotations you're making. You can't have Trev Chalobah at right back and you can't have Estevao at right wing. You need to have, say, Malo Gusto and Estevao, or you need to have, Cucurella, for example, has something going with Garnacho, as does Enzo. So you want at least two of those players playing together. So maybe Maresca sitting down and saying, okay, how do I develop those partnerships further, and which others need working? And I think that's how he's going to formulate his side from here on. It's a tough job to do. I think you have a strongest 11, in my opinion, now, and that strongest 11 does not have a number 9 or a number 10. It doesn't have Delap, it doesn't have Joao Pedro. So how does he rotate in these two scheme of games where he has to keep pace with the Premier League top side, and he also has to keep points on the board in the Champions League? So that's going to be the biggest issue for him. But he's still learning, and it'll be the right kind of challenge for him, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it gives us a really nice platform to jump right into the predictions. Then, what are you going for, and what's your on the ledge?
Oh, I think this is tough. And I think it's always tough after a result you didn't expect to be as bad as it was. I mean, if we had lost to Leeds and it was like a 2-1, you might feel a little bit better than what we saw. And then even, just in terms of the overall performance on the pitch, if you just go back to think about it, like I said this against Leeds, so I'm just kind of saying, again, it's just what the reality of the situation is. From 2020 forward, we've had a very strong record against Bournemouth. We started 2-2 draw, we away, a 2-1 win at home, a 3-1 victory away, a 0-0 draw, a 2-1 victory at home, a 1-0 victory away, and then most recently in January of last year, or of the last season, 2-2 draw. So I'm going to hope it's a win. And I'm going to say like a 2-1 win is definitely in the balance, particularly if we're going to see a little bit of Cole Palmer. And, Pedro Neto obviously has been in extremely fine form. I'm going to say maybe 2-2 draw is kind of what ends up happening for this one. And again, I don't want that to be the reality. I would love for it to be a 3-0 victory. I just don't necessarily know if I see it at this point in time. I'm going to guess that Semenyo likely has a goal contribution. This one, that's just not on the ledge. That's just how well it has been going for him. If I were to think about on the ledge for this one, I'm torn. I think I would like to see Esteban and Cole Palmer on the pitch together. And if they do, I think they will combine for a goal together. That is going to be my on the ledge prediction, because that requires two things. It requires both of them being on the pitch together, which structurally is going to be a challenge. But Enzo Maresca looked really happy when he got asked the question about the two of them getting to play together. And so I'm going to bank on that. Like, he does want to see that, and he wants to see that soon, because if he can see that soon and he knows that there's something there, even if the strike partnership of Joao Pedro and Liam Delap is not firing, Cole Palmer and Estevao being in fine form and developing a partnership is something that could return maximum dividends over the entirety of December.
Yeah, happy is not the word. He looked like, I don't know, somebody was assembling a cheeseburger right in front of him. He looked absolutely delirious at the thought of them playing together. But yeah, it will qualify as an on the ledge, because they may have maybe 10 minutes as a crossover. And if they do combine for it, then we've all been eagerly waiting for that kind of partnership to spark. You've got, the double magic act sitting there and trying to pick apart Bowman's defense. So I will definitely give you that. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think, obviously, like you mentioned, we have a track record of giving out of form attackers something to feast on. So I will go maybe 2-1, a very narrow 2-1 win for us. Not going to be easy, but it's going to be quite scrappy. And my on the ledge is that it's going to be like a goal is going to come via a through ball from Andre Santos. So yep.
We both have gone with some very unique on the ledge ones for this one. And I hope when people are leaving comments on YouTube, they can give us some additional fun on the ledge predictions here. But that's going to do it for this episode, because we wanted to get it turned as quickly as possible for you all ahead of the fixture. And again, if you've been trying to access the podcast on Apple Podcasts recently, and there was just a back end issue that we're kind of working through, so we apologize if you haven't been able to get it in your feeds there. You can always go to Spotify. You can always go to YouTube. The content is available there as well. But we just apologize that there's a back back end issue that's been causing publishing concerns and situations for us. We are working to get that sorted as quickly as possible. So I will not say leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts today, but you should leave them on Spotify. You should get involved with us on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified when we drop a new video. Like and comment on there as well. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter, One's Blue Dispatch, written by our good friend Sam. And you can get involved in our Discord community in a free or paid capacity. But that's going to do it for this one. So thank you so much for listening. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.